All right. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Welcome to the Genesis show. It is currently 8:21 p.m. And of course, today's date is the 20th of July 2025. Welcome to the Genesis show. Happy Sunday. How are you doing this beautiful evening? I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday evening, getting some rest, some well deserved rest because tomorrow is Monday. So kick your feet up this evening, enjoy your time with your family, and let's get right straight to the show. All right, Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, that is the topic for today. Tulsi Gabbard speaks on very controversial issues that Americans have been, sort of kind of like thinking about for a long time since probably 2016, 2017, and also in 2020. So we're going to check that out right now. And also, don't forget, it is America first. America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. That is truly my belief. And also, God is the greatest. God is the greatest. So, shout out to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the channel. Don't forget, you are American first before you are a Republican or a Democrat. Okay? It's not Republican first or Democrat first. It is America first before parties, country before parties. So be nice in the comment section. All right. Be nice to your fellow American sister or American brother. Just be nice. Be nice. All right. Be nice. You're not fighting each other. Okay. You cannot grow in a divided nation. You have to be unified. So everybody come together and let's embrace our differences. Okay. With that being said, we're going to check out Hannity on Fox right here. And of course, we're going to listen to um, BNI, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She's going to speak to us very soon, but I want you to listen closely on the information she has just discovered. This happened probably a day or two ago, but we're going to walk our way from that time to the current day. So everybody sit back, enjoy the show, and be nice. All right. God is the greatest. Here we go. Enjoy the Genesis show.
So, on his very first day in office, President Trump signed an executive order announcing that the federal government would, quote, take appropriate action to correct past misconduct related to the weaponization of law enforcement and the weaponization of our intel community. No person alive today knows what it's like to have the full force of the federal government turned against you better than Donald Trump. Well, he does not want any other Americans to have to go through what he went through because President Trump, frankly, has been bent to hell and back. And it all started at the beginning of his first term with the totally phony Russia hoax. We spent 3 years unpeeling every layer of that onion on this program with John Solomon and Greg Jarrett and Sarah Carter and others. Today, we're learning another shocking detail about the early days of that sham investigation. We have a newly declassified report prepared for President Barack Obama back in December of 2016, right after Donald Trump won, specifically stating, quote, Russian criminal activity failed to reach the scale and sophistication necessary to change election outcomes. And they were talking about one place in Chicago. Now, the deep state did not like the assessment. That was put together by career people, rank and file people. But when the politicized people around Obama got it, guess what? It changed. They never let Obama see it. Then when he asked them to prove that Russia meddled in the election, they just simply complied and they turned it on its head. And frankly, in many ways, you can say they polluted what was real intelligence and they turned it into poison. And they did it to destroy one man. Is it any wonder that there are now reportedly criminal investigations, this conspiracy investigation by Kash Patel underway, and it specifically names Comey and Brennan. All right, here to give us all the details and bring us up to speed with reaction, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She declassified this report yesterday, has many more details. You know, I have this creation of the Russia hoax that you put out on X, that you posted on X, and I'll put it up as you're speaking here. What is amazing to me as I've gone through this cache of documents you've released is they concluded just the opposite. They concluded there was no problem. And then all of it, that was the rank and file. These were career people in the intel community. They gave honest assessments. Then all of a sudden it ends up in the hands of the leadership, the deep state as we call them. And what happened to it? Can you explain what the process and what these documents reveal?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. This is such an important issue, and I just want to start by saying that this is an issue that is important to every single one of us as Americans. This is not a partisan issue. It has to do with the integrity and the strength of our democratic republic. And it lays out this over 100 documents that you're referencing that I released, declassified and released, spells out in great detail exactly what happens when you have some of the most powerful people in our country directly leading at the helm, President Obama and his senior-most national security cabinet, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and Susan Rice, and others, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November. Now, you referenced this President's Daily Brief document that was drafted for President Obama in early December that reaffirmed what the intelligence community professionals, as you say, had been assessing for the previous 6 months leading up to the election, which was that Russia neither had the intent nor capability to essentially hack the outcome of the U.S. election. As you said, President Obama's political appointees pulled that document before it could be published, and it has not been published until we released it today. And the very next day after they pulled that document, President Obama called a National Security Council cabinet meeting to discuss how Russia interfered with the election. Again, this is the first week of December. This is December
9th,
President Trump had already won. Correct.
This is the December 9th meeting.
That's exactly right. The December 9th meeting, we declassified and released what they call the summary of conclusions from that meeting. Then DNI James Clapper took the lead on what President Obama wanted done, and which was essentially create a document that tells us not if, but how Russia interfered with the election. President Obama delivered the conclusion that he wanted the intelligence community to reach and directed them to find and essentially create and manufacture the intelligence to support the conclusion that President Obama wanted to deliver to the American people. Once that document was drafted, the deep state kicked into gear and did what they usually do. They started leaking this classified information out to their friends at the Washington Post and others who are working hand in glove with the deep state to lay the groundwork for the assessment that they eventually released that served as the basis, once again, for this years-long coup with the goal of trying to subvert the American people's will and usurp President Trump from being able to deliver on the mandate that the American people gave to him when they chose to elect him as president of the United States.
So you had career intel people that came to a conclusion that, in fact, Russia did not interfere, that it had no impact, and they didn't like the assessment, and they have this meeting with President Obama at the time, and they make the decision, a very conscious decision, to pervert real intelligence, turn it into phony intelligence, but also simultaneously something else was happening. And James Comey, for example, was warned about the Russian disinformation dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton. He was warned not to trust it, but it became the bulk of information for not one but four separate FISA warrants, ruined Carter Page's life, but also backdoored an ability for them to spy on President Trump, candidate Trump, and transition team Trump. Nobody was ever held accountable for that either. Now, to me, it sounds like you have appointed powerful bureaucrats that just flat out created a narrative that was false to undermine a duly elected president. Now, if that's not a grand conspiracy, I don't know what would be. Do you see crimes here?
I do, Sean, and I'm referring all of these documents that we have found and uncovered, referring them to the Department of Justice for further investigation, accountability and action, not just investigation, but action. Accountability has to take place. The American people's ability to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic is literally what's at stake, and therefore the future of our ability to exist as the country that we know it. This accountability is critical to make sure that this never happens again. Exposing the truth and naming those who are responsible should drive that accountability that has to take place. I just want to mention quickly, Sean, you mentioned the Steele dossier. That plays a critical role in these documents that we released, specifically because James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan, they all knew that the Steele dossier was discredited at this point. It's not something any intelligence professional looked to as something that could be referenced or should be referenced in any intelligence assessment whatsoever. I know that there were professionals who were told include the Steele dossier in this January Obama-directed manufactured piece of intelligence, and they protested to people like John Brennan and James Clapper. They were shocked that it would even be considered. The Steele dossier was used in this manufactured assessment that President Obama directed be created, along with many other pieces of intelligence that the intelligence community itself, for months leading up to the election, said this is not credible and should not be used at all.
We've got to get to the bottom of this. I hope there are criminal referrals at the end of this. This investigation has got to be thorough, and I have every belief that this is a big release today.
Yes, this investigation has to be thorough. But I got to say something before we move on, man. Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen. Tulsi Gabbard. What a DNI.
Late night talk shows used to be an oasis for American families to come together at the end of a day and enjoy a laugh with the rest of the country. David Letterman led The Late Show for over 20 years and revolutionized the industry.
We will be dropping strange and peculiar objects out of the 7th floor of the Ed Sullivan Theater building. Hal, do me a turn on the camera out there. There we go. The biscuit's in place. There it is. On the snout. Ready? Here we go.
Wait. Toss it.
After decades of service in the late night war, Letterman retired, and Stephen Colbert was appointed as his heir. Despite Colbert making a name for himself as a partisan cable news comedian, the country was told he'd be a host for all Americans.
Obviously, the character he does on Comedy Central is going to be ending, but then he's going to bring Stephen Colbert to the table. And we have no question that this guy is so talented that, you know, the persona of Stephen Colbert is going to work so well in late night. It's going to be original, it's going to be smart, and it's going to be different than what anybody else has.
George Clooney and Jeb Bush were the guests of his first show. But things got a lot worse after Trump beat Hillary. Colbert caught a wicked case of TDS, and he never recovered. He went off the deep end during COVID.
The vaccine.
Oh, man, the ratings
What
tanked.
in the world?
Letterman averaged nearly 3 million in his final year. And today, Colbert is only averaging a little over 2 a night. This show is seen by close to 4 million a night. Now, the left's favorite late-night mainstream mouthpiece has been let go after a decade of liberal lip service.
I want to let you know something that I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season. The network will be ending The Late Show in May. And yeah, I share your feelings. It's not just the end of our show, but it's the end of The Late Show on CBS. I'm not being replaced. This is all just going away.
But when Adam Schiff is a regular, you shouldn't be shocked when the bosses pull the plug.
So I just want to direct this, if this is the right camera, or maybe that's the right camera.
That's the right camera right there.
Donald, piss off.
After the show was done, Schiff came out swinging with a new hoax. Quote, just finished taping with Stephen Colbert, who announced his show was canceled. If Paramount and CBS ended The Late Show for political reasons, the public deserves to know, and deserves better. Pocahontas is picking up on pencil neck smoke signals and is already offering to chair the first Senate powwow. Quote, CBS canceled Colbert's show just 3 days after Colbert called out CBS parent company Paramount for its $16 million settlement with Trump. A deal like that looks like bribery. America deserves to know if his show was canceled for political reasons. While D.C. Democrats try to impeach Trump a third time because their favorite comedian got canned, Colbert's friends in the media are dusting off the dictator hoax.
This is textbook authoritarian rule. This is not just a media story. It's a free speech funeral in slow motion.
It's not even like they're trying to hide the main purpose of it. This just makes it look completely connected with the 60 Minutes settlement.
I think people are right to think that there may be something going on here beyond purely financial calculations and that politics are part of it.
Paramount says this has nothing to do with politics, and it's purely a financial decision. And for the first time ever, I believe CBS. Colbert's show has been bleeding the company dry. It loses $40 million a year. It somehow costs over $100 million to produce a single season. And Colbert's salary, $20 million a year. Even if he took a pay cut, it still wouldn't help.
Think back to 2023 when The Late Late Show with James Corden went off the air. I reported at the time that that show had become unprofitable, that CBS was not able to sell enough ads to make that show profitable. Well, that is now the case for Colbert as well. I'm told by a source close to the network that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is now technically unprofitable. So that does give the company a financial reason to end the show.
And if your show's a subsidized liberal charity case on life support, is it smart to call half the country Nazis while they're in their pajamas?
One massive part of the conversation that's been completely omitted from this, and that is when you do a show that attacks half of America every night and you don't have conservatives on, and by the way, you're not funny, but attacking half of America and your ratings suck, you might lose your show.
But there's a lot of reasons why the Colbert ratings are not working out that have nothing to do with the political divide you're talking about.
But it's constant. He's having on Democrats to trash Trump. He has constantly been trashing conservatives. He referred to Donald Trump as a Nazi lover in 2017.
Liberal late-night TV is unfunny and unprofitable. And celebrities can promote their movies and shows on other platforms. White, black, man, women, gay, and straight. Everyone's getting 86 by the mainstream media, and it has nothing to do with identity politics. It's about money and ideology.
Let's be honest, I don't think you were fired after all those years because of your skin colour or because you're a black woman. I think you were fired because your show just got increasingly unpopular. It happens all the time in TV. That's why you got let go. Why play the race card?
First of all, I love the fact that your play the race card is your version of the race card. You literally are so fixated on trying to racialize conversations with me, Piers, that I find it actually quite charming.
You racialize more
It's
conversations
in your
tenure at MSNBC than any host in history.
All right, Mark. All right, Piers.
TDS and no talent, that is a toxic combo. And a lot of highly paid people are finding out with pink slips. PBS, NPR, they became government-funded propaganda pieces, and now their government funding's going adios. Liberals say, without our propaganda, though, we're all going to die.
This is the end of a publicly funded media era. Radio and TV stations will have to lay off staffers and cut back on programming.
This is completely outrageous. They rely on a series of public broadcasting to get alerts out.
People need immediate, up-to-date alerts to stay safe. And sometimes, all too often, public broadcasting is the only way for people to hear what's going on. It's a matter of life and death.
People used to trust the mainstream media, kind of, back when the media was a little more trustworthy. But Fox, talk radio, social media, they changed that. Now they trust us. The country was given a choice, and those choices have consequences. Being lectured by a drama queen isn't informative or entertaining. Here's a CBS reporter who claims he has PTSD after the Butler shooting, but not because he was almost shot. He thought the crowd was going to kill him.
For those of us there, it was such a horror because you saw an emerging America. And it wasn't the shooting, Chuck. I got diagnosed with PTSD within 48 hours. I got put on trauma leave, not because I think of the shooting, but because you saw it in the eyes, the reaction of the people. They were coming for us. If he didn't jump up with his fist, they were going to come kill us.
I know. Trump got shot in the head, and the reporter says he's the one who almost died. We are in a new era. It's called the Golden Age, and the legacy media is going the way of the dinosaurs, and Trump's happy to nudge him into extinction. Do you even need late-night comedy with this kind of material in the White House? Fox
with this kind of
alert,
material.
We just got a peek inside Obama's black book, and it turns out Barack knew the Russia hoax was a hoax all along, but pushed it anyway to sabotage the Trump presidency. DNI Tulsi Gabbard declassifying pages and pages of documents, showing Obama's intel guys briefed him just weeks after the 2016 election that the Russians didn't actually sway the election. Quote, we assessed that Russian and criminal actors did not impact the recent U.S. election results. Criminal activity also failed to reach the scale and sophistication necessary to change election outcomes. But Obama just couldn't accept that. So he and his staff instructed intel agencies to cook up new reports to support Russia collusion. Quote, after the meetings, Clapper's executive assistant emailed intelligence community leaders, tasking them to create a new intelligence community assessment per the president's request that detailed the tools Moscow used and actions it took to influence the 2016 election. Tulsi Gabbard described what she found as a conspiracy to subvert the will of the American people. And she says the people involved should be prosecuted and has made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. We knew Hillary created the dossier, and now we have proof that Barack was calling the shots and the documents to prove it. Let's bring in founder of Public News, Michael Schellenberger. All right, Mike, how big is this?
Hey, Jesse, great to be with you. First of all, it's very big news. It's great to see this coming from the ODNI, from Tulsi Gabbard. She's already released a huge amount of documents that people are aware of around JFK. This is a huge tranche of documents that they've declassified and released to the public. And what they showed, Jesse, is exactly what you said, that they knew early on that there was no hacking of election machines. That was very clear to them. And so then they had to, but they wanted to keep using the word hacking almost certainly to be misleading, to mislead the public. I mean, I myself remember hearing about hacking of the elections, and I thought they were talking about the voting machines. They were just using that metaphorically, but they got the Washington Post and other mainstream news media outlets to talk about that, I think, in that way. And what they were really referring to was the release of Hillary Clinton's emails, totally unrelated to what was happening on Election Day. They were just talking about, what was in Clinton and Podesta's emails didn't have anything to do with hacking election machines. Jesse, I think the bottom line is this is another instance where you see the Democrats having projected what they were doing onto Donald Trump. The Obama administration was undermining public confidence in the elections, deliberately undermining confidence in the elections, and then accusing the Trump campaign of doing the very same thing.
Do you believe that the alleged FBI investigation into Comey and into Brennan is also related to these documents? And could there be more people under investigation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is still so much more to be released. I mean, you may remember that we had reported that it was really earlier in 2016 that Obama's CIA director got foreign assets to basically bump into, to get information to and out of pretty junior Trump campaign staffers in order to then create a predicate for the FBI to open its investigation, which, if you can follow the steeplechase here, was basically all aimed at leaking information to the news media to create a perception that Trump was somehow compromised by the Russians. And that's just what keeps coming up and over and again. They knew that they didn't have the actual intel or any evidence to actually bring any charges against Trump because, of course, he didn't do any of the things they were accusing him of, but they were constantly leaking to the news media. And that was one of the things that we saw revealed today in these new documents, is that they were using the intelligence community essentially as a public relations arm.
I guess now we know when Trump said, "I used to be the hunted, but now I'm the hunter," what he was talking about. Mike Schellenberger, great.
All right, here we go. Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden's breaking his silence, and he's distancing himself from his daddy.
Uh-oh.
Do you think Joe Biden was involved in some cover-up? Do you think Jake Tapper's telling the truth when he says that I was the acting chief of staff of the president? I was in that White House 12 days over the course of the last 2 years of the administration. Clearly, because I had other things going on. Okay? You ask one person to go on the record that would ever tell you that I was in any way making a single decision about anything in that White House. I stayed as far away as I possibly could, which, by the way, broke my heart.
It's so bad, even Hunter doesn't want to be associated with the Biden administration. The coup and the landslide shattered the structure of the party into a million pieces. And now it's up to Gavin and Tampon to save it from the commies. Black Rogan, Jamie Harrison, just launched a podcast and booked Tampon as his first guest. And the party's so broke, they couldn't afford 2 couches. So they had to share.
In Winnie the Pooh, Democrats are a donkey, but we are sure as hell are Eeyore most of the time. It is a woe is me party, and everything is dark and dim. And the Republicans remind me of Tigger. Tigger will everything up. I mean, he will just mess it all up, but never take any ownership of it. Like, still hopeful and joyful and bouncing around and messing other things up.
I never thought of that analogy, but it is pretty apt.
Who you calling a Tigger? Trump spent 6 months cleaning up your mess. Democrats are only woe is me because they're the party of women and they're out of power. Trump's bouncing around having a good time because he's pumping up American business. And even though Timmy and Jamie have never run a business, they want you to know they're not Marxists.
Donald Trump sells snake oil or whatever, but it's capturing this idea of wealth and being able to be successful, which we as Democrats, we want people to pay their fair share, but why are we against people being successful like that? We can't be. Why are we against? We should talk about businesses. Not all businesses exploit their workers, and we get ourselves stuck in that.
Oh, well,
and Governor, I think we lose them.
Not all businesses exploit their workers. Way to go, Tampon. The Chinese honeymoon's officially over. But the racism, that's still sticking. Tampon says one time a black guy told him not all black guys are criminals.
This is one that Wes Moore is really good at and talking about black men and what happened. And he said, you get a lot of good-hearted politicians that'll come to black men in the community and talk about we restored felon voting rights. And he said, not knowing how insulting that is for these young men.
Tampon just found out not every black guy has a record. Waltz is learning things from all kinds of people. He just found out from his son that Trump's fun.
My son was able to vote as an 18-year-old, and I asked him about his take is, especially young white men, is he said, Dad, a lot of them aren't about the policies. Mm-hmm. They're about the thrill and the excitement, and, Trump brings the circus type of thing.
Yeah. Then it was time to throw Kamala under the bus. And we've never heard this before from him. He's always been a very loyal number two. Tampon called Kamala lazy. He called her a quitter.
Trump even gets the whole thing about, being part of a team. Give them the same hat, the same slogans and stuff like that. It's maddening to us. For a while there in August, I think we were giving them that place to go. You gave it to them in Chicago. You gave them something. And then we just kind of quit.
We did.
He didn't quit for 4 years.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Democrats may hate Trump, but they love that he's the real deal. Quote, party leaders are swearing more, recording more direct-to-camera videos, and trying to project an authenticity many voters have come to associate with Trump. You can't act authentic. You either are or you aren't. Black Rogan was downright giddy to tell Tampon that the only rule was no rules.
It's family talk. It's street talk. There's no frills, no fancy words. Feel free to drop F-bombs or whatever you got to do whenever you got to do it.
Everybody wants to be like Trump. After 47 served fries at Mickey D's, Gavin's locking up the Hispanic vote, making tortillas. Remember when Trump posted a taco bowl on Cinco de Mayo? They called him racist. But what do they call Gavin sweating in the back of a Mexican restaurant? At least he learned his lesson. He's not serving caviar at the French Laundry. Meanwhile, no matter how hard the white guys try, the commies stealing their base and their property.
Would life be better if we just abolished private property?
I think it probably would be better. That's not what my platform is, that I'm saying to abolish it, but my platform is to decommodify it. The system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
Kami Mamdani says abolishing private property is a good idea. This is the guy Democrats are swooning over because he's so authentic. I guess he is authentic. He's saying the things the rest of the Democrats believe but are afraid to say. That's why they love him. So if I understand this correctly, Mamdani is a commie, but he's not running as a commie.
This guy is not a communist. He's not a socialist. He's an advocate for small c capitalism. And that, he really is fighting for the little business guy that's trying to eke out a living in New York. Half of all New Yorkers, get their jobs from small business.
More like small c communist. It is a red wave, and not the good kind. First New York, now Minneapolis. Here's their next mayor.
It is a big spending bill. Like I said, it's $400 million, but to be honest, it's not an expense, it's an investment. It is relatively small compared to the scope of the issue of systemic racism. This country was founded on the wealth extraction from the labor of Black people, and that legacy will just not fade by itself. It needs to be uprooted.
This is what the next 3 years is going to look like. Semi-straight white guys trying to win back the working man, while a young communist typhoon sweeps the base off its feet. Even CNN admits the Dems are cooked.
The bottom line is this. Democrats are behind their 2006 and 2018 paces when it comes to the generic congressional ballot. Look at where we are now. Democrats are ahead, but by just 2 points. Look at where Democrats were already ahead by in 2017. They were behind by 7 points. How about 2005 on the generic congressional ballot? Ahead by 7 points, ahead by 7 points. And now they're only ahead by 2 points.
Not only are the American people quitting the Democrats, Democrats, like Kamala, are quitting on the American people. Senator Spartacus and his crew are just walking off the job instead of doing it.
Why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's all we have here,
This
Mr.
is
Chairman.
wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable. There's a way to do this. If you want to force this through, if you want to ram this through, there's a way to do it in accordance to the rules as spelled out by the parliamentarian.
Look, this is it.
Last week, Governor Newsom mocked him and called him a tough guy. So right here on the steps of the Capitol, I asked him to respond to Governor Newsom.
All right, so ICE in LA. Here we go. A lot is going on, man.
There's no sanctuary city. Sacramento is not a sanctuary city. The state of California is not a sanctuary state. There is no sanctuary anywhere.
So now there's a raid on this Home Depot in California's capital city of Sacramento. Look at the video there through the windshield. Driving that point home from the comment you heard about a sanctuary city. Fox was there exclusively as it all went down, and Bill Maloogian joins us now live in Sacramento. What you see, Bill, what you hear? Hello to you.
Hey, Bill, good morning to you as well. With illegal crossings at the southern border at the lowest levels in recorded history, that has freed up Border Patrol resources to come and help ICE with interior immigration enforcement. And we joined a Border Patrol California strike team as they came right here to Sacramento and carried out an operation. We'll get right into that video. Take a look at this. As soon as we pulled up to a local Home Depot out here, suspected illegal immigrants started taking off running in all directions pretty much as soon as they saw those federal agents pull up. That immediately led to several foot pursuits with agents chasing these men down. Border Patrol tells us they ended up arresting 11 illegal aliens at this one Home Depot parking lot. Several of them had criminal histories and prior deportations. More on that in a moment, but we want to show you this. Take a look at this. They also chased down and arrested this U.S. citizen, the guy in the black hat, after agents say he slashed the tire on one of their vehicles. You'll see them pursue him. He goes to the ground, entangles with agents on the ground, then appears to lunge at one of those agents. Well, that ended up causing him to get maced in the face. Take a look at the aftermath of this. I snapped this photo as I came across the scene here. You see him with mace in his face. He was arrested for impeding federal agents, according to Border Patrol. His wife was there screaming that he's a U.S. citizen. Agents said, well, too bad. He slashed the tire on our car. He's coming with us today, and we do have photos of that slashed tire. Take a look at this. You can see the puncture mark or the slash there, and then the deflated tire. Border Patrol having to drive that vehicle off on its rims. In the meantime, we talked to the Border Patrol chief who organized this whole operation. Last week, Governor Newsom mocked him and called him a tough guy. So right here on the steps of the Capitol, I asked him to respond to Governor Newsom. Take a listen.
If it's going after child molesters and kidnappers and that makes me a tough guy, and rescuing children from forced labor and that type of thing, then I'm guilty as by God charged. Guilty as charged. If making Mom and Pa America a safer place, if that makes me a tough guy, guilty as charged.
So, Bill, I talked to Border Patrol, and the initial records checks on the guys they arrested came back. Here's what they have. One of them was a Mexican national who's an aggravated felon with a prior conviction for fentanyl trafficking. And listen to this. He's been arrested in California 67 times since 1986. There was another, a previously deported Guatemalan aggravated felon, a previously deported Mexican national with a prior arrest for driving without a license, and a Guatemalan with the previous removal in 2009 with a prior arrest for trespassing and failure to provide ID. Bill, those were just random guys standing around at a Home Depot here in the sanctuary state of California yesterday.
So, Bill, wasn't there a federal judge in L.A. that tried to block the Trump administration from doing raids like this?
There were. That was Judge Frimpong in Los Angeles. But the thing is, her ruling only applies to the Central District of California, which is 7 counties in Southern California. It has no impact whatsoever up here in Sacramento, which is in the Eastern District of California. That has a separate judge's order on it right now, which says agents can't do arrests without probable cause. However, Border Patrol told us this was a targeted operation. They said they chose this Home Depot because they did surveillance on it starting 3 days ago, where they were running license plate scanners, doing facial recognition software. Some of those hits came back, and they matched to people who had been previously deported from the United States. That gave them suspicion that there would be illegal immigrants present at that location. So then once they got there and they got out of their vehicles in their Border Patrol marked vests and people took off running the second they saw them, they say that then gave them probable cause to move in and make those arrests, Bill.
Likely more to come, maybe this weekend, maybe next week, we shall see. Bill Malugin, thank you for that.
It's going down in L.A. All
Cams
right,
go wrong.
check this out. This guy right here was at a concert with his HR, head of HR, and they were having a good time, just having a good time. But he got caught, okay? And his wife was home, doing housewife things while he was out here doing homeboy things. But here we go.
That now viral moment from a Coldplay concert sparking an online frenzy. The New York Post dubs it Dumbotron. Alexis McAdams joins us from the New York newsroom with all the details. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, yeah, you got to watch that, and you kind of almost cringe, and you can see that guy is, he's laughing, and then he looks pretty scared, thinking, oh my gosh, how many people are watching this? And unfortunately for these two, a lot of people have seen it. We're talking about these two who were caught in the kiss cam, and Coldplay's frontman at the concert calling him out, saying, did we just expose a big secret? Watch.
Oh, look at these two. All right, come on, you're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
Well, the two quickly ducked out of view, or they tried to. The woman even threw her hands on her face, trying to hide her identity, but it was too late. That's not how the internet works. These sleuths identifying the duo as Andy Byron, the CEO of the company named Astronomer, and his chief.
It's because we live in a social media world, but really, this is nobody's business. This is between him and her and their family. It's not everybody's business, but we live in the social media world, so everybody wants to get into people's business. Most people that are talking about, well, he's such a scumbag, she's such a whatever. Your husband is cheating on you too. Go talk to your husband, okay? Your husband is cheating on you too. He's not just on Kiss Cam. All right, it's just the facts. Okay, it is just the facts. However, this is a BS move from this man and this woman, and she knows he is married. Well, at this point, I'm sure he was married.
Human Resources Officer Kristen Cabot, the head of HR. Cabot is reportedly recently divorced, but Byron appears to be married, or at least he was. According to reports, his wife removed her married name from her Facebook page before she just deleted it altogether. The internet cannot get over this viral clip. If you look at your feed, this is all you're going to see. We know that Byron has been the head of Astronomer, which is a data company based in Cincinnati, since 2023. Cabot joined the company a year later, and in a press release we found, Jillian, Byron said she is the perfect fit for this company, and Cabot said she was really energized by her conversations with Byron. The viral moment was posted on TikTok and viewed millions of times, like more than 6 million times as of now. The woman who posted it told the New York Post, hey, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She said she didn't feel bad about posting this online. A fake.
According to Derek, I just sent it here in the chat. Derek said they should have just gone along with it. Absolutely. Just do something like, "Woo, we're having a good time." His hands was on her, a chest. His hands was on her chest. But, as soon as you see the camera looking at you, play along, dude. This bro he didn't go through high school properly. I can tell you that much. Because in high school, you cheat a lot. Bro, come on, just go along with it. What are you doing, bro? Going hiding your face on Kiss Cam? You are hiding your face? Bro, you could have just done something. You could do 20 things right then and there that would just, nobody would care about whatever you did. But now it's you're going viral. But look, I do not condone cheating, but a lot of married people cheat. So this isn't new. This isn't shocking. This isn't shocking.
Statement also reportedly from Byron talking about this was posted by a parody account. That's made the rounds, but that's not the case. He did not comment. We reached out to the two senior execs and their company, Astronomer, for comment, but we haven't heard back. But, as you know, Jillian, from all these stories being shared online, this isn't going to go away anytime soon, so we'll see if they comment.
Alexis, I don't think you're going to hear back. I don't know why this is not funny. I don't know why I'm smiling, but we're going to leave it there.
I think it's just shocking, I think people are like, what the heck were they doing? So
it's very sad for that guy's family, obviously.
We're going to step lightly, but we're going to step lightly with our karma, okay, ladies? Brian Brenberg, co-host of The Money Show on Fox Business, and Deborah Lee, Parlor brand voice here in New York. Good day to both of you. New York Post.
Yeah, it's not shocking. Talking about it shocking. All right, Tom Holman.
Anti-Trump protesters have hit the streets across America this week, and they rallied under the guide of what the late Georgia Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis called, quote unquote, good trouble. But the good part of the trouble is missing when it comes to targeting federal agents who are doing their jobs. Here is Chicago's Democrat mayor speaking at a protest in his city.
Let me make something absolutely clear in the most emphatic way.
All right, here we go.
We will not cooperate with ICE. We will not be intimidated by the militarized force that Donald Trump has put before us.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has been working overtime, you might say, to fight ICE operations in her city. She's pushing to make sure we know the identity of the agents.
We also are filing a Freedom of Information Act because we want to know who these masked men are. We want to know where the people are that they're detaining. Do you know they've detained hundreds of people? Families don't know where their loved ones are. They don't know if they're in Los Angeles, California, or even in the United States.
ICE fired right back with this. Mayor Bass, our officers wear masks because rhetoric like yours has ramped up threats and assaults against their families. They're doing their job and detaining illegal aliens who broke immigration law. Enough of the fear-mongering for political attention. DHS reports assaults on ICE agents are up 830% from a year ago. And just this week, an illegal alien from Honduras dragged an ICE agent for nearly a block, dragging him on the ground with a car as he tried to escape custody in Oklahoma. And this is some of the injury to that ICE agent. Last week, a mob of rioters was throwing rocks at ICE agents, executing a criminal search warrant in Southern California. Some of their most dangerous work is executing those search warrants, and you can see why. One agent's injuries sent him to the emergency room. I want to bring in now border czar for the White House, Tom Homan. Tom, these pictures do more than just make you angry. They let you know the price of trying to clean up what we've been left by open borders.
You're exactly right. And you're right in your statement that this rhetoric is causing this hateful response to ICE. Comparing ICE to Nazis and racists and terrorist organizations. And I said 2 months ago, Harris, that if this rhetoric didn't stop, there would be bloodshed. Of course, the left went crazy on that statement, but unfortunately, I was right. One man was killed when he attacked a Border Patrol facility in Texas, and another group of armed men ambushed a facility in Texas, an ICE facility, where one officer was shot in the neck. And it's not over with. I mean, unless this rhetoric stops, you're going to see more. And it's because of hateful rhetoric by the Democrats. And
it's like, how did we even get here where federal agent vehicles would be stoned? You're throwing rocks at federal agents' cars. What is this? This has to stop. Every time Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States, for some reason, the blue state, I'm not trying to cause any type of division or whatever, but this is the facts, especially California, Illinois. It's mostly the blue state. Everybody says, well, we're not going to comply with Donald Trump. He is the commander-in-chief. What are you doing? Nobody said we're not going to comply with Joe Biden. They just let him do what he did. Why is it that every time President Trump gets into the White House and gives a mandate, blue states like, we're never gonna. Not nice.
Those that are mayors and governors and members of Congress. It has to stop. Because the truth, they're shielding the truth of American people. I'm tired of reading the news reports that majority of people in ICE detention aren't criminals. The fact is the majority are criminals. And who are the others? Others are national security threats that we're detaining because they're not going to walk the streets of this nation. May not have a criminal conviction, but a national security threat. Others are expedited removal cases that by federal statute we must detain. Of course, those facts don't make it to the media. They say that most people we arrest aren't criminals and public safety threats. The fact are, I looked at the numbers the other day, had 130,000 arrests, 90,000 were criminals, which is, what's that, 69 point, almost 70%. So the facts are the facts, but the media's not sharing the facts of American people. And you add that to the rhetoric from these politicians, and that's why you're seeing the attacks on ICE skyrocket.
Look, I have to talk about this ripping of identity covering off the faces of ICE agents who are under physical threat right now versus the criminals and the illegal aliens who are here, former gang members, some of them still in gangs, MS-13 just roaming our streets as that. Why did they get to mask up? But our agents, according to the leader of Democrats in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, why do our ICE agents need to take their masks off and endanger themselves and their families?
You're exactly right. Where's the legislation to remove masks from the protesters to become criminals? The protesters, they become criminals. They threw Molotov cocktails at officers. Where's the legislation on unmasking BLM and the other rioters that attacked ICE facilities like in Portland? They're all wearing masks. All those criminals in Portland that are attacking ICE facilities, they're all wearing masks. Where's this legislation on that? You don't see it. The Antifa. They can wear masks, no legislation on that. Look, President Trump made it clear the other day, when I spoke to President Trump, it's over. You throw a stone at an ICE officer, you're going to jail. You put hands on an ICE officer, you're going to jail. You impede an ICE officer from doing his job, you're going to jail. Here's what American people need to know. ICE is enforcing the laws that Congress enacted. So if that makes them a racist, what does that make Congress, who wrote the law? So you got members of Congress attacking ICE who wrote a law that Congress funds ICE to enforce, and they're doing exactly what Congress told them to do and gives them money to do. Then the other part of the equation is they're executing final orders issued by a federal judge. A federal judge has determined this person can't be here, he must be deported, so they're executing those orders. ICE is doing their job as mandated by Congress, as mandated by the federal courts, as mandated by federal statute. If you don't like it, then change the law. But ICE agents every day are taking public safety threats off the street, national security threats off the street. Every day, ICE is making this country safer, and that's just a stone cold fact.
All right, I want to move to this. According to reports, 7,500 unaccompanied migrant children have been tracked down under the Trump administration. Look, you have told me for the longest time, almost the entire presidency of Joe Biden, that this was your dedication, to find those children. Well, under Biden, DHS data show agents encountered nearly 500,000 children at the border on their own. Reports at the time suggested some 300,000 of them had gone missing. In fact, DHS Secretary at the time, Mayorkas, said he had no idea where the 300,000 kids were. You have been passionate about this, and you're moving the needle. Tell me about it.
Well, the Biden administration, not only they lose over 300,000, they weren't looking for them. President Trump committed from day one, on top of the mass deportation, having the most secure border in history of this nation, President Trump also instructed us, go find these kids. Because we know some of these kids are in forced labor. We know some of these kids are in forced sex trafficking, and we found some, unfortunately, in those conditions. We found many with their families. But we're going to find every one of these children and make sure they're safe. And, we'll deal with the immigration consequences down the road, but the first and the priority of these children is rescuing those that are in forced labor and forced trafficking, making sure they're safe. Something the last administration didn't do. They want to talk Trump 45, separating families. You just spoke about 500,000 kids coming across the border who were separated from their families, put in the hands of criminal cartels to be smuggled in this country. That's where real family separation happens. Family separation also happens, the hundreds of angel moms and dads that I met that buried their children because they were murdered by someone that Joe Biden released into the streets of this country.
The job is mighty. You have agents still willing to do the job. I want to give the last few seconds to you, Tom Homan, to talk directly to those men and women who stay on the job even under threat now, because I hate to think what happens if they sit down.
Look, I've done this since 1984 here, so I started as a Border Patrol agent. I'm proud to wear that uniform. I was an ICE agent. I was first acting ICE director that actually came up through the ranks. I love the men and women of Border Patrol and ICE. They're the finest people in this nation. They're patriots. They put a gun on their hip every day and put a badge in their chest and put themselves in harm's way for little or no money. I want the American people to understand they're doing the job that they took an oath to do. And let's remember, they're moms and dads too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day they come to work. They see terrible, terrible things they take home to them every day. They have issues too. They're seeing the most terrible of human nature out there, but they're dealing with it every day, making this country safe. God bless the men and women of ICE. God bless you, Border Patrol agents. You're doing America's work.
And God bless you, Tom Homan.
There you have it. The border czar, Tom Homan. News on the street is his face looks like the border wall is doing his thing. He's definitely unstoppable. All right, here we go. DNI.
So brand new
Tulsi
revelations
Gabbard.
into the alleged Russia hoax, a trove of declassified documents revealing evidence that the Obama administration manufactured and politicized intelligence during Trump's 2016 election.
The documents released by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, described secret meetings after Trump's victory where Obama officials directed the intel community to leak reports that Vladimir Putin was personally involved in the U.S. election hack. This after the intelligence community repeatedly determined that Russia was not trying to influence the election by cyber means.
Here with more is DNI Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, thanks for joining us. And some of those individuals were literally the leaders of the intelligence community under President Obama. How significant is these documents that you've released?
Thank you so much. And thanks for focusing on this issue that these documents have really brought to the forefront, because it's one that doesn't just affect Democrats or Republicans. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue with such significant impact that it should concern every American, because it has to do with the fabric and integrity of our democratic republic. That we had a situation here where in the months leading up to the 2016 election, the intelligence community assessed, and this is what the documents detail, the intelligence community assessed essentially Russia doesn't have the tools, the capability, or the intent to try to change the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. Donald Trump pulls off a historic victory against Hillary Clinton in November of 2016. Even in the days after that election, the intelligence community continued their consistent assessment that reflected the same thing in the months leading up to the election. All of a sudden, in the early days of December, there was a president's daily brief that was drafted. This is put together by the different elements of the intelligence community that reflected that same assessment. Russia did not try to hack the election, in essence. That PDB, that document, was pulled hours before it was supposed to be published for the president to see that following morning. That document was never published until we released it yesterday. One day later, President Obama calls a meeting of his National Security Council, his top officials, to be held on what they called a sensitive topic. And the results of that meeting, which we released yesterday, and these over 100 documents that talk about in detail how President Obama and his team, he directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election that President Trump won in November of 2016. This document was then used as the foundation for everything that came next. It was essentially a years-long coup that was launched against President Trump before he even had the opportunity to take his oath of office and be sworn in as President of the United States. So, as you know, there was a Mueller investigation that went on for years, cost taxpayers nearly $40 million. There were 2 congressional impeachments. President Trump and almost every member of his family were smeared and attacked, faced lawsuits, depositions. High-level officials were investigated, some were arrested and put in jail. The list goes on and on about the ramifications of this, but foundational to it all was the fact that we had in President Obama and his leadership team people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016, and therefore cooked up this treasonous conspiracy to, again, try to effectively, and they did effectively, launch a years-long coup against the sitting president of the United States.
Director Gabbard, I'm glad you used the word coup. I also, in some of your reports, the word treason has come up. We're seeing a lot of things coming to light these days, and it's very encouraging for Americans, especially this report, which so many of us knew this was a hoax. But this goes all the way to the top. I mean, this goes all the way to Barack Obama. Will we actually see someone as high up as Barack Obama take responsibility, be accountable, maybe face criminal charges? Is that a possibility here based on the documents that you've released?
Yeah, Rachel, the seriousness of, again, the implications and the consequences of these actions that were taken demand accountability. The American people not only deserve the truth and accountability, when we look at the future of our country as a democratic republic and the American people's ability to have faith that when they go and cast a vote at the ballot box, that the will of the people will be respected by those in government, whether they be Democrats or Republicans. This is literally what is at stake here. So we are referring all of our documents to the Department of Justice for the purpose of accountability and action. No one, no matter who they are, no matter how high up they are or how powerful they may be, no matter who the intelligence officials or professionals were who were a part of this treasonous conspiracy, there must be accountability. The truth must be shown to the American people in order to ensure that there is this faith and trust and integrity in our democratic republic for the sake of the future of our country.
So as voters, can we feel confident that we will actually see charges, do you think, out of this?
I'm not a lawyer. We're referring all of this to the Department of Justice. I know that Attorney General Pam Bondi is committed to bringing about justice to those who have broken the law. And in this case, again, what these documents detail, to me, in my view, cannot be explained as anything but a treasonous conspiracy. This is not so different from what we saw under George W. Bush, when we saw that manufactured intelligence claiming there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that kicked off a war that changed our country, that changed the lives of so many people like myself who went and served in those wars. The implications of manufactured intelligence are real. I would even say that what we are seeing here has an even greater impact than what we've seen in the past, because it speaks again to the foundation of our Constitution and our democratic republic, which is why accountability is so critical.
Amen to that. We can't, and by the way, we cannot weaponize our intelligence community against our enemies, our political enemies. That is wrong, and there are huge consequences. Tulsi, thank you for declassifying this. This is
shout out to Tulsi Gabbard for declassifying those information, for sure. But I got to say something, man. Tulsi Gabbard. DNI.
It's really because Tulsi did such a brilliant job, our DNI director did a brilliant job of laying out what exactly she declassified. And Charlie and Griff, I just think we can't overstate what a scandal this is. This might be the biggest political scandal of our lifetime, bigger than Watergate, by the way. And she just declassified the proof that this was actually a coup.
That's right.
By Barack Obama and his buddies.
Yeah, and arguably she's highlighting arguably the biggest political scandal storm of a decade, accusing the Obama administration of manufacturing the Russian election interference narrative against Trump in 2016.
Yeah, Madeline Rivera has this story. Good morning, Maddie.
Good morning. DNI Tulsi Gabbard is accusing former President Obama and his intelligence community of politicizing intelligence to lay the groundwork for what she calls a years-long coup against President Trump. Gabbard says declassified documents show in the days leading up to the November 26 election, intelligence officials consistently stated Russia is probably not trying nor have the capability to influence the election by using cyber means. Their tune, she says, changed after the election, and she specifically brings up a December 9th, 2016 meeting among Obama intelligence officials, including former DNI James Clapper, John Brennan, and former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. After that meeting, Clapper's executive assistant sent an email to intelligence leaders tasking them to create a new assessment per Obama's request about the tools Moscow used to influence the 2016 election.
He directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election that President Trump won in November of 2016.
Gabbard says she's referring the documents to the Justice Department.
We're referring all of our documents to the Department of Justice for the purpose of accountability and action. No one, no matter who they are, no matter how high up they are or how powerful they may be, no matter who the intelligence officials or professionals were who were a part of this treasonous conspiracy, there must be accountability.
Democrats, for their part, are rejecting Gabbard's accusations. They say a report released by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee back in 2020 detailed Russia's effort to interfere in the election to benefit President Trump. Social media was cited as a big tool in that campaign. The report, though, concluded there was no evidence any votes were changed or that voting machines were manipulated. Charlie Rachel Ingriff.
Thanks, Maddie.
You got it.
It really is amazing when you go through what she laid out for us yesterday and you compare it, go back with the timeline to real time to what Barack Obama was saying publicly, what James Comey was saying, what all of these people who helped perpetuate this hoax were saying to the public, but also testifying under oath to Congress versus what they were saying behind closed doors in these now released memos.
Griff, does the President Obama, I mean, we talked about it with Director Gabbard yesterday, that this goes all the way to the top. And she said, well, I'm not in charge. It goes to the DOJ and they decide. But does he have presidential immunity in this? And then everybody else is going to be stuck holding the bag here?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm not a lawyer, but clearly one would think that if Pam Bondi decides to go after former President Barack Obama, you will see a lot of presidential executive privilege defenses. But it was a great question when you asked Tulsi Gabbard about specifically how high it should go, because we know, and as Maddie was reporting, look, this was Obama's intelligence apparatus, the DNI, the NSA, choosing to omit intelligence that they had, that Russia was not involved, to create a narrative, to manipulate and politicize this information that led to the years-long Russia hoax. And so when she was talking about accountability, she says that, look, this shouldn't even be a partisan issue.
No, it shouldn't.
When you talk about Americans' trust in their government institutions and their highest top leaders. Listen here.
It's not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue with such significant impact that it should concern every American, because it has to do with the fabric and integrity of our democratic republic. There was a Mueller investigation that went on for years, cost taxpayers nearly $40 million. There were 2 congressional impeachments. President Trump and almost every member of his family were smeared and attacked, faced lawsuits, depositions. High-level officials were investigated. Some were arrested and put in jail. The list goes on and on about the ramifications of this, but foundational to it all was the fact that we had in President Obama and his leadership team, people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016, and therefore cooked up this treasonous conspiracy to, again, try to effectively, and they did effectively, launch a years-long coup against the sitting president of the United States.
Treasonous.
So
treasonous
important.
conspiracy. You know, the last time I heard the word treason was in history, Benedict Arnold. Can I ask you a question? Will the New York Times and all those people that got Pulitzer Prizes over Russia hoax, will they have to return? Now, I mean, no, I'm not saying that in a joking way.
Yeah.
Now that the documents prove that this truly is, I mean, they could pretend before, but now we have the proof that it was a hoax.
They'll never apologize because they are so committed to it. And we didn't even get into that marvelous interview with Tulsi Gabbard yesterday. We didn't even get into the whole part of it, which is the media involvement in it, because they very purposefully knew exactly how they could manipulate the media, Washington Post, New York Times, to get the stories that they wanted out there. And they did it brilliantly, actually, but you don't even have to do it brilliantly when the New York Times and the Washington Post and the rest of the media that went along with this was so in bed with them and so eager to push this false narrative. Two things. One is a lot of people's lives were destroyed by this, this hoax. And there are a lot of people that you've never heard of whose lives were destroyed by this because of this intelligence junta that went after their political enemies. And those people should be they should be made whole again. Then the third thing is that does Obama pay a price for this? Well, the new norms are that apparently you do arrest the former president. You do go after the former president. You charge the former president with whatever you want. And apparently, executive privilege goes out the window now. That's the new norm that these people created for us. So I don't want to hear any crying from these people.
Because Donald Trump specifically said that he, and we all saw it, he had a lot of restraint with Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
The last time.
Yes.
When she broke the law, he said, let's just put this behind us. After what they put Donald Trump through, I'm not sure the president's going to be quite as forgiving this time, because they made his life hell. And as you said, we have no idea. We don't even know the names of the people, on the tip of our tongue, who lost their homes, because they were investigated and they had to get lawyers.
And they've been arguing forever. Respect the norms. The problem with Trump is that he doesn't respect the norms. Okay, we'll respect the norms.
I think you're the first person to call it an intelligence junta.
It is.
That's very highbrow.
We'll see if Barack Obama has such a cool mugshot as Donald Trump.
I'm working on my...
I'm Steve Ducey.
Yo, this is getting way out of hand. Everybody's getting the boot. Everybody. All right, more information on
to do
Obama's
creating
situation.
This piece of manufactured intelligence that...
All right, here we go.
Led by then President Barack Obama, CIA Director John Brennan, and Hillary Clinton, among others, took the world on a wild goose chase to try and take down their political enemy, Donald Trump, no matter the casualties along the way. DNA Tulsi Gabbard is now calling for prosecutions, revealing declassified documents from the Russia collusion made-up investigation, which she says detail a treasonous conspiracy by officials at the highest level of the Obama White House to stop incoming President Donald Trump. The cabal included Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Jim Comey, and Susan Rice, who pushed a made-up story that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election, so the cabal would not lose their grip on power. All of this exactly as then Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, Judiciary Committee member John Ratcliffe, and President Trump himself told us so many times from day one.
What that is it's the original intelligence, the original reasons that the counterintelligence investigation was started. Now, this is really important to us because a counterintelligence investigation uses the tools of our intelligence services that are not supposed to be used on American citizens. So we've long wanted to know, well, what intelligence did you have that actually led to this investigation? So what we found now, after the investigators have reviewed it, is that, in fact, there was no intelligence.
As a
former federal prosecutor, my opinion is that declassifying them would not expose any national security information, would not expose any sources and methods. It would expose certain folks at the Obama Justice Department and FBI and their actions taken to conceal material facts from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
How involved was John Brennan?
Totally involved. He was totally involved. John Brennan was one of the architects, in my opinion. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at them all. But ultimately, the president knew everything. The president knew everything. President Obama and Vice President Biden, they knew everything.
And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to Congress. They spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won.
Joining me now is the woman herself, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you.
What was the most damning thing that you learned after looking through all of these declassified documents?
Maria, the implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American, because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president, commander-in-chief of the United States. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do. So creating this piece of manufactured intelligence that claims that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected contradicted every other assessment that had been made previously in the months leading up to the election that said exactly the opposite, that Russia had neither the intent nor the capability to try to, quote unquote, hack the United States election for the presidency of the United States. So the effect of what President Obama and his senior national security team did was subvert the will of the American people, undermining our democratic republic, and enacting what would be essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, who was duly elected by the American people.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to something Devin Nunes said, which is exactly what you're saying right now. And he said, after all of our investigation, we found that there was no intelligence. There was no intelligence actually indicating that Trump colluded with Russia. And what happened? Because there was a presidential daily briefing that was presented to President Obama every day. And every day it said the same thing. We have no evidence of collusion. We have no evidence that Russia did this with Donald Trump. So what happened? How did they actually get the public to believe, and half the public believed, that actually Trump did collude?
Well, this is the thing, Maria, when you look at the assessments that were made, not just by one element of the intelligence community, but in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, I oversee 18 different intelligence community elements. And in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community agreed that there was no intelligence that reflected that Russia was trying to hack the election in favor of either candidate. The evidence showed, the intelligence showed that, again, Russia did not have either the intent nor the capability to be able to impact the outcome of the United States election. So it was very striking when we look back again at the documents that I declassified and released that shows there was a shift. In early December, the first week of December, again, another document was produced by the intelligence community, a president's daily brief that was consistent with every other assessment that was done previously leading up to the election. Russia did not, this is after the election now, did not attempt to affect the outcome of the American election. That was never published. Hours before it would have gone into President Obama's President's Daily Brief, it was pulled by a senior level intelligence official saying that they had to pull it because they had received new guidance. The very next day, this meeting was called, a National Security Council meeting, bringing together all of the senior leaders of President Obama's cabinet, and the topic that was put forward was a sensitive matter. The tasks that came out of that meeting was coming from President Obama directing the intelligence community, then Obama's ODNI director Clapper, to produce a document, to produce an intelligence assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow affected the outcome of the election that had already occurred, electing Donald Trump to the presidency. This document that they published in January of 2017 was the foundational groundwork that they continued to reference over and over and over again to enact this years-long coup against President Trump.
Now, I know that Devin Nunes came out with the Nunes report and a lot of other reports after that to indicate everything that you're saying. And I guess the worst of the reports, the real evidence, is the reports of most recent, right? The last reports are the worst reports that we're going to see. And I understand that there is more, perhaps, that you are going to come out with next week. And I was told that that's why they raided Mar-a-Lago, that they wanted to find the Trump-Russia documents that indicated there was absolutely no collusion and that there was no evidence to even start such an investigation. But Trump didn't have it there in Mar-a-Lago, but that's why they raided his house in 2022. Is that correct?
I don't have the details on the specifics of the Mar-a-Lago raid itself. Those are within the possession of the FBI. But there's no question in my mind that this intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered be published, which contained a manufactured intelligence document. It's worse than even politicization of intelligence. It was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency and subverting the will of the American people. So yes, next week we will be releasing more detailed information about how exactly this took place and the extent to which this information was sought to be hidden from the American people, hidden from officials who would be in a position to do something about it. And that's really the point here that I think is most important, Maria, and you said it in your opening. Accountability is essential for the future of our country, for the American people to have any sense of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. Accountability, action, prosecution, indictments for those who are responsible for trying to steal our democracy is essential for us to make sure that this never happens to our country again.
Yeah, and I want to get to that right now because I've heard talk of a criminal referral. Are you referring this in a criminal matter?
We are referring all of the documents that we have uncovered to the Department of Justice and the FBI for a criminal referral.
Yeah. And do you believe that we will see prosecutions? I mean, our audience wants to know where this story goes from here. Will we ever see anyone held accountable for this incredible lie on the American people?
I will do all that I can, and we have whistleblowers, actually, Maria, coming forward now after we release these documents, because there are people who were around, who were working within the intelligence community at this time, who were so disgusted by what happened. We're starting to see some of them come out of the woodwork here because they, too, like you and I and the American people, want to see justice delivered. So we're going to provide everything that we have, everything that we will continue to gather to the Department of Justice for that direct intent and that direct purpose. There must be indictments, those responsible, no matter how powerful they are and were at that time, no matter who was involved in creating this treasonous conspiracy against the American people, they all must be held accountable.
So do you expect, just to be clear, do you expect indictments and prosecutions?
I'm not a lawyer. In my view, we have the evidence to be able to move forward and bring about justice, yes, to prosecute and indict those responsible.
And I want to really put a spotlight on who's responsible, because we've talked about the highest levels: Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper. But we also have to look at things like, you just found all of this. Why didn't Durham find it? Why didn't Mueller find it? Okay, what about the FISA judges? Because when you look at this seditious conspiracy aimed at overthrowing the U.S. government and an elected president, you have to consider also the black robes. You've got to look at the FISA judges. And how about the fact that the judge who gave a slap on the wrist to Kevin Kleinsmith, who was the FBI agent who lied on an official document about Carter Page, who was spied on for a year, that judge is Judge James Boasberg. He's still at his desk, and he's still trying to stop Donald Trump's agenda. So what about the broader group of people that are also involved?
Maria, this is of such historic consequence that it cannot be limited to one or two or three different people. You just outlined the implications and the effects of what actually occurred, and I think you're really putting into a clear picture what we are referring to when we refer to the deep state. It is very far-reaching. These are people who are intent on undermining the will of the American people and trying to ultimately put themselves above our democracy. And this is why it's so important that we continue down this path. We continue to stay very focused. I question the same things that you're asking here. I don't know how it is. Yes, I put my team on this. We've been working on this over the last few months. I've been in this role as Director of National Intelligence for just about 6 months. I don't know what
All right. Heavy storm. So I don't know if you guys can hear me or see me or whatever, but it is storming real bad. Okay? It's storming really loud. That's right, boo boo. Storming really loud. It is storming really bad, man. I hope the internet went out. We're back, thank goodness. I'm guessing it's gonna go out again, but it is storming really, really bad. Lightning, thunder, going wild. Anyway, here we go.
reaching. These are people who are intent on undermining the will of a few months. I've been in this role as Director of National Intelligence for just about 6 months. I don't know what excuse there is for those who supposedly investigated this previously, whether it was Durham or others, that they were not able to put together the dots and ultimately show the truth to the American people. President Trump has delivered a maximum transparency mandate, and this is exactly what we're doing. The American people need to see the truth, and we're going to continue to do that every single day that I'm here.
Equally outrageous was the fact that we had the handwritten notes of John Brennan. I reported on it at the time. The CIA reported to President Obama that the Russians were aware that Hillary Clinton had come up with this idea to blame the Russians and working with Trump to win the election. And we actually saw his handwritten notes. So there's that evidence that, again, all of those people who were supposedly special counsels, independent counsels, blew off, right? Robert Mueller, John Durham.
That's right. I really cannot fathom. There is no rational or logical explanation for why they failed. The only logical conclusion that I can draw in this, Maria, is what you're implying here directly, is that there was direct intent to cover up the truth about what occurred and who was responsible, and the broad network of how this seditious conspiracy was concocted and who exactly was responsible for carrying it out.
So at the end of the day, we need to look at Pam Bondi. Is that the person who at the end of the day is going to bring us accountability? Pam Bondi?
Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, it is their responsibility to gather all of the evidence, both that we have released, the facts that have already been known previously, the information that will continue to come out, and move forward with this prosecution and these indictments.
All right. We are on it, and we'll be watching that. Director, thank you very much for bringing us this.
All right. Yes. Welcome to the live show. I don't know if I could keep the stream going, but I might be able to keep this stream going. All right. Stephen Colbert definitely lost his show. Oh, here we go.
So the one and only Rob Schneider joins us now. You know, I do have to sort of think it's kind of funny that they say this is a financial decision. Yeah, it's a financial decision because your show was terrible and nobody was watching it and you were losing money.
Well, there should be no fuzz on this at all, Griff. The Russians got Colbert fired. And I think I'm willing to testify if I get complete immunity from the Trump administration and from CBS. I'm willing to testify. No, but I just found out this morning also, if you go on social media, that a district court judge has prevented CBS from firing Stephen Colbert, which I don't think is fair either.
You know what's interesting is these Democrat politicians like Elizabeth Warren and a few others have come out and made statements in defense of Stephen Colbert saying, hey, you fired him for political reasons. I know that you're an outspoken conservative. I imagine there are some jobs maybe that you were passed over for because of your views.
I just want to say, if Elizabeth Warren wants to pick up the tab for what CBS has been losing, just take away from her private jets, and she could put it towards Stephen Colbert's salary. I mean, yes, I mean, it's a lot tougher for, I love it when I and other, conservative comedians get accused of grifting off the right. Well, there's a lot more grift, as we've noticed, at the U.S. aid from the Democrats. As I sit here in Boston and outdoors, not paying for a room to rent to do this interview. Yes, I've lost. Of course, I've lost potential for money. It's a lot easier to get. That Colbert never had me on his show. Neither has Jimmy Kimmel or I guess I was on a couple of times early. But look, it's. Here's what happens. Like, Colbert already cut the pie. It's a pizza. He already cut it in half. His potential audience, he cut it in half with it just by cutting out all conservatives at all, not caring about, the 47 states that may have a different opinion than the Democratic Party of open borders and women have junk between their legs. We have to, and so he had half the pie already gone, and then he has to divide that pizza in 3 slices with Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, and then he's working for a third of a piece of pie, and that's just. It's not going to pay the bills. They have 200 employees, and frankly, I have more people will watch this on Twitter than for his advertising group that everybody on TV seems to still think is important. That 18 to 35 group, and it's just that audience isn't there anymore. The late night show is a relic, but the thing about it, which was special when I was a kid, when we were my family, we were all. Climbing mom and dad's bed and watching TV, Johnny Carson, was he made the show for everybody. He didn't alienate anyone. And you never knew who he kind of thought that these guys all leaned left, like most of the media. But you never knew 100%. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. And I hope it goes back to that.
Yeah, and he didn't insult the viewers. People that worked all day long came home and wanted to laugh, not get lectured on politics. Lastly, Rob, let me just ask you, what do you make of our own Greg Gutfeld? Has really come in and upended it, even beating people like Colbert and changed the game.
Well, I would tell you what it is was you have somebody like Greg who's genuinely funny, and he has funny people on, and he tells jokes. And yeah, he definitely skews right. I think he might be a conservative. I'm not 100% sure. You never know with Greg.
Yeah.
But he's great. He's the #1 guy for a reason. And I don't think he's belittling anything but a party that has allowed itself to position themselves to be belittled, to deserve that kind of ridicule. And that's all we could do as comedians. We could set something up and say, is this ridiculous or not? And unfortunately, the powers that be in the liberal media have allowed themselves to be ridiculed, and now they've allowed themselves to spend themselves into the ground to where CBS is no longer afraid from the woke empire, which is collapsing, to say, hey, we're going to fire this guy, we're going to save some money, we don't care the reaction of whatever Jimmy Kimmel says.
I love that. The woke empire is collapsing, and it's allowing people like you who are genuinely funny to rise to the top. And we love having you on, Rob, and we hope that you come back, and we'll get you a room next time that we have an interview with you.
We're calling Elizabeth Warren right now to get you back in that building.
Steve Colbert, I think he's going to land on his feet. I feel terrible. He only has $100 million to do it, but I'm sure that that's a way. If you think ahead, if you plan ahead with that $100 million, I think you're gonna land on your feet, Steve.
Yeah. Come in studio next time, Rob.
All right, will do. I'm going to get kicked out of the building any minute now.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Oh, this guy. All right, here we go.
Welcome back. And now we move on to the second biggest scandal in U.S. history after Russia collusion. The massive Democrat cover-up of Joe Biden's mental capacity and the use of the auto pen to shape and make U.S. policy. That was Anthony Bernal, the chief of staff to former First Lady Jill Biden, refusing to answer any questions during a closed-door testimony before the House Oversight Committee, investigating former President Biden's mental health and his use of the auto pen during his term. On Friday, former Biden Deputy Chief of Staff Annie Tomasini became the third former White House aide to plead the fifth in the oversight probe, following Biden's personal physician, Kevin O'Connor, and Bernal invoking their constitutional right. The Oversight Committee has scheduled 4 additional transcribed interviews with former Biden aides Ian Sams, Andrew Bates, Karine Jean-Pierre, and Jeff Zients over the coming months. Joining me now with more on these 2 massive Democrat scandals of the last 10 years in an effort to stop Trump, our House Oversight Committee members, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds and Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Great to have you both with us. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to get your take on what happens now. Congressman Byron Donalds, you just heard and saw you're not getting any answers from the auto pen. So who is running the country? And all of those pardons that were written by the auto pen and approved by Jeff Zients, are they legitimate?
First of all, Maria, good to be with you. Look, I think that those pardons are illegitimate. I believe the person that was actually in charge of it actually was probably Mr. Bernal, because he was Joe Biden's right-hand man. And according to many accounts, Mr. Bernal was the one who was making sure stuff got done in that White House with several others. I think you have to subpoena every official of the Biden White House, including the First Lady and including the Vice President, Kamala Harris. They all need to come in. They all need to answer questions.
Well, Anna Paulina Luna, Congresswoman, you know our audience is frustrated at this point. We've had 10 years of scandal against President Trump. Half the country still thinks he colluded with Russia because of that crazy lie and fantasy that Barack Obama and the rest of the cabal came up with. Are we ever going to see any accountability here?
Most certainly, Maria. You saw with the report that Tulsi put out. I mean, we're talking about there needs to be criminal prosecution and arrest. You know, lying under oath, putting out a false intelligence report. That's a violation of 18 U.S. Code 1001 that comes with a 7-year prison sentence and up to $250,000 fine. But we're talking about something more nefarious than this. I think that this is a perfect example and reason why there needs to be FISA reform as well. As you know, Maria, that false intelligence report resulted in FISA courts issuing a warrant to illegally surveillance the president of the United States now. And what I can tell you is if we don't stop this, if we don't actually say this will not be tolerated, this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. This is about the health and the sanctity of a constitutional republic. And so there needs to be arrests. This is not partisan. This is simply illegal what they did, and we're simply upholding the law.
I mean, it's just extraordinary. How do you believe they got away with that? Byron, what about that? How was it that this cabal of senior people in the Obama White House was able to convince so many people of this lie when they had no evidence whatsoever of it?
Well, they got away with it because once they leaked these false narratives and false reports, you had big media organizations who just went lock, stock, and barrel, did not fact check, did not go and do the extra work, did not do any due diligence whatsoever. They just followed and towed the company line. And then you have the deep careers in the intelligence community who either they were afraid of being fired or having their clearances revoked, or B, were so concerned about a Donald Trump presidency that they felt it was okay to concoct false information into the American people, into the body politic. So Anna is completely correct. There need to be arrests on this matter. People need to go to jail on this because this is about the republic. This is not about one president. It is about the presidency and the continuation of our country.
And we know that you all can't make arrests in Congress. You can, make referrals as you have, and you can have hearings, a lot of hearings as you have. But this is, at the end of the day, falling to Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. And those are the two people who can right these wrongs. Will they do it, Anna Paulina Luna?
I feel like this is an easy layup and an easy win because there's a lot of evidence and a lot of public outcry to do the right thing. Even if there wasn't, they should do this, right? But I do feel like that they'll be making this right. And I will say, Maria, Congress can, under inherent contempt, make arrests, but the votes have to be there. And as you saw last time with Merrick Garland, 4 Republicans protected Merrick Garland from releasing those hurt tapes.
So we've been talking about this 10-year period of scandals. So it starts with Russia collusion. It goes into impeachment of President Trump over nothing, a phone call. And then it goes into more lies and attacks on him. And then it goes into Joe Biden's presidency and the use of the auto pen. So I want to get your take on that. Why all of this effort to stop Donald Trump, in your view? I mean, let's not forget he was indicted 90-plus times.
I think President Trump represents something.
I'm sorry, my apologies. I should have said, no, we don't want to talk on top of each other. But go ahead, Anna.
I was just going to say, I think that President Trump represents everything that the uniparty and the establishment.
Man, one thing I know is Anna Paulina can go all day. Yeah, give her the mic all day, Anna Paulina. Byron, you're great, but we got to let Anna talk, man.
Is against, as you're seeing, Maria, this is not something that's just a political talking point. We have evidence that they did try to stop him in every way possible, not to mention there were not 1 but 2 assassination attempts on the president. So I think when you're looking at what the power structure is in this country, it's typically been, corporate interests controlling politicians, people that have never been business owners, business leaders in this country, and they've done politics for their entire professional career, which is everything that our founding fathers stood against. And so both Byron and myself, through all of this, have been very happy to bat for the president and to defend him because, as you're seeing right now, this is the core definition of corruption. And I know the American people are frustrated. And what I will say is that the American people want arrests. There's the evidence out there. This is not partisan. And there needs to be a correcting of this wrongdoing because what happened was absolutely wrong.
Congressman, final word. Byron.
Only thing I would add, Maria, and Anna's absolutely correct. The only thing I would add is this is about the Democrats as well. They want continuous power for their radical agenda. What they wanted all this entire time was a continuation of the groundwork they were trying to lay from Barack Obama. Donald Trump was the stopgap to that, and they were furious, and they did not respect the will of the voters. And all they want to do is bring the radical ideology, whether it's gender right ideology in schools, the crazy energy policies they've brought to the United States, the crazy environmental policies, which are slowing our country down, and terrible economic policies, which will empower Washington and not the American people. And Donald Trump's movement has always been about putting the American people's first, putting Washington last. That is something that the Democrats abhor. And so they went to any means necessary to try to stop his momentum and stop his movement. But we found out once again that they've lied to the American people. They have betrayed the trust of the American people, and they should never be allowed to have power again in the United States.
I mean, it's just incredible the lengths that they have gone to to paint a picture of a man who they deemed as dangerous to upending their grip on power. Truly extraordinary. And I'm honored to have been able to talk with you all about it and to watch this up close and personal myself.
People are saying that, a lot of people are saying, especially Floridians, they're saying that Byron Donalds is most likely going to be the next governor of Florida. What do you guys think? It's actually good.
We have a Fox News alert. The LAPD now saying it appears a driver intentionally plowed into a crowd of people outside of LA Club early Saturday morning.
Yeah, Chanley Painter is here with the very latest. Hey, Chanley, good morning.
That's right. So the investigators say after reviewing security footage, they are sure it was an intentional act. They also say the driver was kicked out of the club for being disruptive about 8 minutes before he drove a Nissan Versa up onto the sidewalk, ramming it into the crowd and injuring at least 30 people, 7 of them critically.
That driver was then pulled out of his vehicle, physically assaulted by the bystanders, and during that altercation, somebody produced a firearm and shot the driver. That shooter did flee on foot, left the area, so there was the threat of the shooting suspect was gone, but you're still dealing with a chaotic situation of dozens and dozens of people being hit by a vehicle that plowed into them. It's a lot going on.
Police believe the driver was intoxicated and has been identified as a 29-year-old Fernando Ramirez. He was arrested on suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon. LAPD said all of the people injured, including Ramirez, are stable and expected to survive. Police are still investigating, of course, for a motive and are still looking for the male shooting suspect who fled after shooting the driver at that scene, guys.
All right, Chanley Painter, thank you very much.
I'm Steve Doocy. So you get bounced from a club, and the next thing you do is you get in your car and do stupid stuff. Okay? So next time, is this what everybody's thinking about doing right now? Exactly. No. Because why would you get bounced from a club, and the next thing you get in your car trying to do stupid stuff?
And we're following the latest on our breaking story out of East Hollywood. At least 30 people injured after a driver plowed his vehicle into a crowd early this morning. The LA Fire Department says 7 of those injured outside the music venue are in critical condition. CNN's Julia Vargas-Jones is outside the venue. Julia, what more are officials saying about the driver, why all of this happened? Any new information?
Yeah, look, they're still looking for that motive, Fred, but they are piecing together a bit of a timeline of what happened here between this individual being in the car and dragged out and then eventually shot. I want to play for you just a soundbite from the police explaining what they know so far.
The driver of that vehicle was pulled out and a physical altercation ensued where the bystanders were physically assaulting him. During that altercation, somebody produced a firearm and shot that driver of the vehicle. The driver was transported to a local hospital in unknown condition. The shooter in this situation is still outstanding, and we consider him armed and dangerous.
And Fred, this is their priority right now, is to find that shooter. They said they are still investigating, trying to find that man. But I want to just bring this home to you that this is a neighborhood, East Hollywood, just east of Hollywood and between Los Feliz and Silver Lake. It's a part of town that is generally deemed safe, that you wouldn't necessarily expect this kind of an altercation or a criminal activity to be happening, or for someone to pull out a gun outside of a nightclub. It is a part of Los Angeles that has a vibrant nightlife, and that is part of the shock of the story this morning. Mayor Karen Bass even saying, earlier today that her heart goes out to Angelenos and all of the victims impacted by this, and saying that there will be a full investigation into what happened. But we do have reporting at this point, Fred, that has basically discarded any connection to terrorism of this incident, and also any further criminal intent, aside from the fact that this driver, authorities believe, was intoxicated at the time of this incident, Fred.
Okay. Julia Vargas Jones, thanks so much. All right, joining me right now for more is Eric Scott, Public Information Officer with the Los Angeles Fire Department. Great to see you. So let's begin with the scene itself. You know, walk us through what those
this guy
first
look like the guy from
responders
Superman?
encountered when they got there.
Yeah, as you can imagine, it was a very chaotic scene. So first off, we want to say that our hearts go out to everybody that was impacted by this traumatic event. Fortunately, we responded very quickly. It was a rather distressing scene. As you can imagine, at 2 a.m., it's dark outside in East Hollywood. We just had early reports of a vehicle into a crowd, so we didn't know if it was legitimate or how significant. So very busy sidewalk outside of a nightclub. Numerous individuals were present throughout that area because you had a taco hot dog stand that people were lined up in front of. You had a valet podium that people were lined in front. Also people coming out of a nightclub. Therefore, there was a lot of people. When that vehicle went up on that curb, it struck a totally of 30 different individuals. Fortunately, there's no structural damage to the building or extrication that we had to pull people out from rubble or anything. But the scale of the response was significant. We had 100 and find out those that were most significant.
Okay, of course, we know LA is wild. Enders, are you in LA? I think Enders is in LA. I think Enders is in Los Angeles, California. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think Enders is in California. Anyway, so this lady, former Jepstein girl, said she was, you know, like they all say, touched by Trump. Here we go.
Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend speaking out tonight. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s, has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993. Here's what she told our Sunland Serfati when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the, on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of. Then, they were just on me the whole time.
Oh, wow.
And I froze.
For real?
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game. Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now to speak out for the first time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend.
And what does that say about you? What does that say about you dating Jepstein? What does that say about you? Man.
He would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald, and he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about Trump? Sort of what was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
There was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened. I remember because he was late to pick me up and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghislaine and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghislaine in his house. She would come wafting in and out, the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. And they were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein.
Yeah, of course
I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened, I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the two of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have, and now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was
And that
his
says
bestie
it
and
all.
everything, and he was
That
joking
says
about
it
how
all.
Donald thought I was hot and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever.
Wait.
Wants to talk to you. Dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything. And he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you. And he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower. And within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door. And his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them just kept having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking 90, this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And, when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark alleyway, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you go into shock. So I froze. And
you froze?
It was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes. And then we got back in the elevator. And Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue. And he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, why did you let him do that? And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment. And I was confused. So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you...
Man, please. This is a grown woman being allegedly touched in broad daylight. What are you? A child? You can't move? You can't say stop doing what you're doing? Or just leave? You froze. I froze. What made you freeze? What Trump was, what was he? Iceman? Was Trump Iceman? Was Trump Iceman?
You are well aware of, and I know at times you've referenced videos which we have not confirmed the existence of, but I know that you felt that this was...
Wait. What is she looking at right there? What was she looking at right there? What is this lady looking at?
denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you looked back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with, photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape.
She just said he is a master of that. What makes you think he's a master of that?
And, he's a...
And she talking about you when it happens like that, you freeze. No, you don't freeze. And what were you even doing with Jepsen? Why were you involved with Jepsen? Haven't you heard birds of the same feather flock together? Why would you be attracted to Jepsen? Why would you date Jepsen? Matter of fact, that tells me everything I need to know. Well, I mean, man.
He was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape.
Yeah, women like you.
And tonight, if you're aware, President Trump has filed this libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over its reporting that there was this note bearing Trump's name as a signature and an outline of a naked woman that was included in a 50th birthday album for Epstein in 2003, a note that also depicted an imaginary conversation between the two men. And part of it reads, quote, Donald saying, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it, Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that the last time I saw you." And then finally, Donald, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump called that letter fake. He said it was out of character for him because he never wrote a picture or drew a picture in his life. Wrote a picture, I think he said.
No,
it's not his kind of language. Based on your time with both men, does that sound out of character to you?
What, are you kidding me? I know what they were up to together. It happened to me. I was polygraphed.
What were you doing with Jepsen, yo? Don't say you know what. If you know what they were doing together, what were you doing with Jepsen in the first place? That already defeated the purpose of this conversation you're having because you were with Jepsen, yo.
I have the post-assault postcard with a love note. So I have the receipts. Where are Donald Trump's receipts? Where are they? I know what they're up together, and I know what that means. It's very clear. It wasn't baking or fishing.
And you weren't baking or fishing with Jepsen either. You weren't baking or fishing with Jepsen either. So relax with all that. Like, I don't know what these folks think we are. Just come on cable network and say what you want and think we're going to believe you. What in the world, yo? You were dating Jepsen. What made you date Jepsen in the first place? He wasn't no reverend when you met him. He wasn't no pastor when you met him. He wasn't no stand-up dude, I'll tell you that much. But you dated him, didn't you? You dated him. Man, please. Look, that's it. That's it. That's it. I'm done. That's it. This folks right here. I'm done. I am done with this folks right here. What I'm talking about. You were with Jepsen. Why? All right, here we go.
We achieved.
People talking about his name is Epstein, not Jepstein. I call him Jepstein. If you don't like it, don't like it. To me, he is Jepstein. Jeffrey Epstein, right? But I call him Jepstein. What, you want to teach me his name? What do I need to know his name for? Man,
more
folks.
in 6 months than almost any administration could accomplish in 8 years, and we're going to have a lot of good 6 months left. We're going to have a 6 and another 6 and another 6, so we'll keep going.
In 6 months, President Trump has succeeded in getting institutions to bend to his will, whether it's Congress, the courts, law firms, universities, and media companies, often with threats that force obedience among even some of his sharpest critics. But what does the American public think about the president's unprecedented use of his executive power? Well, brand new CNN polling out for the first time right now offers a new warning sign for Trump on his bedrock issue, immigration. Just 42% of Americans now approve how he's handling immigration, with only 40% approving of his policies on deportations specifically. And when it comes to deportations, 55% think Trump has gone too far. And that's up sharply by 10 points since February. My panel is back. So just to dig a little deeper into these immigration numbers that are now just coming out, the view, if you break down by issue on immigration, is how the American public feels. How do they feel about increasing the ICE budget by billions of dollars? Just 31% support that idea. Really, that's the number. That's the high point. We look at ending birthright citizenship, building new detention centers, detaining undocumented immigrants with no criminal record. Under 30% in all those categories. Then what about his immigration policies at large? Are they making the United States safer? 53% of the country says no, they're not. And then the last point here is the federal government carefully following the law on deportations. The answer overwhelmingly is no. 58% say no, and that is about a little bit higher than it was in April. Priscilla, you cover immigration. What's your reaction to this?
So a couple things. When the president came into office, there was deep frustration among Republicans and Democrats over the way that immigration had been handled under the Biden administration. So there was a desire for the president, frankly, to move quickly on immigration, and his team had been preparing for that for the last 4 years. But the question was always, how does he do it, and how does that resonate with the American public? So I actually think the most telling of all of those numbers is the one that's broken down between February, April, and now. Because there are key things that happen in the intervening months. So in March, for example, he had invoked that sweeping wartime authority that led to Venezuelan migrants being sent to the prison in El Salvador, including Abreu Garcia, Salvadoran national. He was part of that mix. That there was intense public backlash when he did that, including from some of his own supporters, like Joe Rogan on his podcast, because there were anecdotes of who exactly made up that group of people, which in the end was not all with criminal records. Then after that, in April, you see the third country deportation. So in May, there was that whole litigation about sending people to South Sudan and to other far-flung countries. So all of this to say that when you're looking at those numbers of how the disapprovals start to increase, that you should look at the moments that happened in between those months where people started to ask questions as to what exactly is going on here, and are these actually criminals that they are deporting? And what our reporting has come to show is that a small fraction are those with criminal convictions. The majority are often those with no convictions or with pending charges, and sometimes those are traffic violations or immigration violations. And so the big question going into the next 6 months, as the president put it himself, is who exactly are they targeting, and then how exactly are they doing it? And with now a lot of money on the table,
hundreds of billions of dollars.
It's going to happen much more quickly. This is going to supercharge their operations. I've talked to the White House border czar, Tom Homan, about this, and that can get messy if they don't do it right. And what these numbers show us is that the public is paying attention.
And perhaps it could slip even further. Go ahead.
But, you know, it's interesting. Yes, these numbers are moving in the wrong direction for the president. It's clear that the average American thinks that his immigration policies are going too far. He's underwater now. The main points of controversy
how is he
around
underwater?
these tough enforcement
That is,
actions
folks.
around otherwise law-abiding residents and so on and so forth. But, and I don't know if you have the crosstabs handy, these top line numbers are different than the splits among Democrats, independents, and Republicans. And you still have a majority of Republicans who really support his immigration actions. Even among those Republicans, there are a lot of Republicans who have, and we hear this again and again in focus groups, a lot of people who voted for President Trump and are Republican are like, I don't know about deporting, like
farm workers,
the landscaper down the street. But having said that, at the top of the segment, you were talking about how he's wielded so much power. And this goes to the issue of gerrymandering, of the way House districts are built, and of the power of the base. If President Trump were running for re-election for a third term, this would be really problematic, these numbers. But if he is trying to control Congress and block Congress from blocking him, as long as the majority of Republican voters are standing by his immigration policies, even if the rest of the country is up in arms about it, he has leverage over his party in Congress, and they're in the majority right now.
And then in the 6-month mark, it's not just immigration where he's underwater. Remember, he campaigned, of course, on immigration. That was one of the strongest issues. The economy was as well. And then you look at how he's doing on the economy, at least how the American public sees how he's doing. Not good. This is 40% of Americans in this CNN poll say that they approve of his handling of the economy. And he's under 50% on pretty much every issue. And even his big bill that passed Congress, just 39% of Americans support his massive domestic policy bill. Do you think Trump is obviously very confident of what he's done so far? He's gotten these institutions to do what he wants. He's accomplished a lot in the first 6 months. There's no doubt about it. But there's a feeling clearly among the American public that he's overreaching.
Right. I'm going to be really closely watching that number with the economy and tariffs. We know that a lot of trade negotiations are still on the table right now, whether with the EU or with other countries around the world. And the president has said, look, we could reach a deal or we could not reach a deal, and I'll just impose big tariffs on these countries. But we know tariffs can be very, destabilizing. We know it's effectively an import tax on U.S. consumers. We know a lot of Republicans don't generally like tariffs. So if these negotiations don't really pan out, if he does go through and impose, punishing tariffs on countries that he doesn't reach a deal with, how that economy number moves will be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and then you look at his numbers historically compared to other presidents at this time in their presidency. President Trump now 42%. That is below every other president other than Donald Trump in 2017. So
yeah, he's really popular compared to 2017. I listen. We did a story the other day. Punchbowl News did a story. They're going to try and bring up immigration bills to vote on in Congress. The House Republicans are. It's not going to pass Congress, but goes back to Margaret's point. The base feels good about it. I do think that this is a huge issue because if Americans are feeling like we're in my economic, I'm not doing better financially than I was, and I see mass guys, downtown pulling people off the street. How is this helping me? And we're spending tens of billions of dollars on this, and I think that's a huge issue here for them. We're seeing just the other day there was a federal judge blocked 50,000 Haitians from being sent out of the country in Florida, and this is huge. These are huge numbers we're talking about. So it's all up in the air.
Yeah. And there's always, whenever a new single party comes in, oftentimes that single party overreaches, and then there's blowback. Oftentimes.
Alrighty, so we will be back. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams, and believe in Almighty God. Shout out to our esteemed members, Dr. Luke, the GOAT, Ellie, Ingram, Sandra, Ringmaster, for sure. God bless you guys. Also, I got to say thank you to the moderators. Shout out to C. Shelley, Jet, Enders, everybody, man. Thank you so much. Also, shout out to Derek. Shout out to Nick Gibson. God bless you. Shout out to CRXR. God bless you, man. All right, we're going to be back. Stay tuned. God bless you. America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It's a great community, and the chat is always going bunkers. The chat is always going bunkers. Anyway, no matter what you're going through, don't throw in the towel. Shout out to the fathers. Shout out to the fathers. And of course, the mothers. Shout out to law enforcement. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military. Shout out to Ice Baby. Don't forget, God is the greatest. America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. God bless you guys. Enjoy your Sunday evening. We will be back probably in like 1 hour or two. We will be back and we're going to do this all over again. God bless you. It is your boy Genesis, and you are tuned in to the Genesis Show. See y'all soon.